Hello JavaScript folks. This is Chapter 3. Chapter 3 covers DOM, functions, and events. We're looking here at the file email list on page 115, and it covers most of what the chapter is talking about. So first let's look at the index, and we're going to look at the index HTML file here in terms of DOM. DOM starts usually at the body. Body is considered the trunk of the tree, and this is an upside down tree. This trunk only has one branch, one child, and its section. Section ends down here and there's nothing else in body. Section, on the other hand, has two children, h1 and a form element, and nothing else. The form element has label, input, span, and 3 times with the label input. So it has all these children. And these particular elements are not considered to have children. They contain the information within. The input, same with input. Input may look like it has a child with a text. However, the text is simply the value of that element. The span, on the other hand, is an element which allows other elements to go within, which in this case is simply an asterisk. So the asterisk is a child of the span element, and that child, the value of that child is the asterisk. And the asterisk is red in this case, and as you know, is because the CSS is taking care of span, the element span, to be red. Very good. I think this is all we need to look at in this code. Folks should know how that works by now. So let's talk about the JavaScript. Here's our first function. This is called the anonymous function because it has no name. The way it works, the function is started with this keyword, and you notice it's on the right side of the equal sign. Therefore, this function, the code of this function, will be assigned to a variable on the left. And this $sign is an odd variable, but it is a legitimate variable name. And it's being used by jQuery. So the book is, I believe, introducing you to this concept. That particular function we're looking at here is so common, then it's very handy to just type one character and there is a variable name. So a function is nothing but a block of code which will execute as soon as it is called. And how is it called? It is called simply by naming the variable. Instead of having a value, we now have a block of code associated with the variable. And instead of the memory location for the value of this variable, we are giving the memory location where the code begins. Functions also require data a lot of time, and this is what the parentheses are for. You can have as many as you want separated by commas. In this case, we just need one. The purpose of this function is to give us access to any element of the HTML code that we need. For this purpose, we use the DOM command called getElementById. We provide an ID, which is passed to the function through this variable name. And the command is going to fetch the beginning memory location of that element and return it. Return it to who? Well, return it to the variable that we are assigning the memory location to. So let's look at this function at work. In this other anonymous function called joinList, we are creating another series of code, and this time the code is quite lengthy. all the way down to here. But same concept. Now the first line in this block of code is attempting to retrieve the email address 1. Email address 1 comes from our first input code here called email address 1. That is, we're going to wait for somebody to type in something, and we are going to retrieve that value. Therefore, we create a variable on the left side of the equal sign. On the right side of the equal sign will be this function, which is called by the $. We are providing the ID for that particular element, input element, and we are using the dot, and we are asking for the value this time of that object. Because this is a function right there, we are calling this function $. We are providing the ID, and we are receiving through this code right here. We are receiving the beginning location of that element, and now that we have the object in hand, we can call its value simply by saying dot value. Since this is the right side of the equal sign, the value of email address 1 now populates email address 1. Now, if you were writing this code and you were following the recommendation of the book on page 125, what you would do right now is run that program as soon as possible. Right? You have written a function here to grab data from an element, and you have supposedly populated a couple variables. So now you would skip validating any of this data and end this function by asking is it valid, and since we have set it to true at this point, this if statement would go through, and notice that you would submit the form at that point. Nothing would happen. So what later on in that chapter 4 recommends to do, in this point you would insert an alert command and probably print on the screen the values of email address 1 and email address 2. That would be the beginning of your program. Once that is running, you can start validating, and also page 125 proposes that you just do one. Go ahead and do one if statement for now and see how that works, because all the others are basically going to be the same. So let's look at this code. If email address 1 equal blank, then what we decide to do is that if it is blank, we want to give an error message that looks like this. So we need to grab the object for email address 1 error, which is the span element right here, email address 1 error. Right now it just contains the asterisk. So we have the span element in our hands right now through this function. We put the dot and access the first child of that span element. And once we are the first child, then we can look at the node value. We are setting up this container or variable node value in this span element, and we're going to dump a string. This field is required. That's it, and since there is an error, we set its value to false, so that when it continues down this code with all the other if and else's, by the time it comes to finally submitting the form, is not going to, because its value is now false. Now, if the if command does not go through, then it will activate the else. What this program wants to do, it wants to blank out the, you notice the asterisk now is missing once once the field is not blank. So let's see how we do that. Again, we call the same span element. We pick on the first child and the node value, and we're going to assign simply a blank into this element, and it will wipe the asterisk out. That's about it for this code. All these others are the same. Oh yes. One more important portion of this code is the window onload. Onload is an event, and when the HTML loads in your browser, when the process is complete, the onload will become active and activate whatever it has been initialized to do, which in this case, a function. A function has initialized the onload, and the onload will execute this function as soon as the HTML code is loaded completely in the browser. This function does two things. The first one, it initializes the on-click of this button called join list, which can be found at the bottom of this code here, input of type button ID join list. Yes, this is a button, and as soon as it is clicked, this event will activate and execute what it has been initialized to do, which is to run this function join list. Join list is right here. This is a long function. It basically does everything. And the point of this is that this function will not do anything until the onClick has been activated. The second line of code in this function is focus, and this is a good thing to do when you have a form. Again, when the page is done loading, such as this. I'm going to press refresh right now. Refresh, and yes, and this is the focus. You see, the first element is ready for the user to start typing. So what happens? This code loads. When it's finished loading, the last two functions are set up, and the focus does put the cursor in the first element, but nothing else happens until the button is clicked. Once it is clicked, then it will start running this function, which has been initialized into this variable name at the beginning of the code. So, hope all's well, with a lot of information in chapter 3 and 4. Thank you very much, and good luck.